Thank you, Chris, and thank you to all of you for spending some of your time here with us here at AEI. It has been my delight to be the host to most of the Bradley Lectures since I've been president, and I've been looking forward to the opportunity to give a Bradley Lecture. And I was especially pleased to be introduced by Chris. I want to call your attention to one thing. He introduced himself as a fellow at AEI, but most of you will recall that he was the president for 22 years of AEI, and in fact it is exactly that humility mixed with his vision that built AEI into the great institution that I inherited. What you see around you and the ideas that many of you have come to admire are the handiwork of Chris Demuth, not of me, and that's something I deeply appreciate. I thought it worth mentioning because I think many of you are his friends and saw that he understated his own role and what's happened here this evening. I appreciate that very gracious and generous introduction. Chris already said everything I was going to say here, so we could just call it a night. I would hate to actually have any of you go home tonight and say to each other, boy, Chris really oversold that lecture. But I do want to talk about the book that I've written called The Battle, and start off by thanking many of my AEI colleagues who are here tonight. This really was a collaborative venture, most notably with my writing partner, Robin Curry. Without Robin, the book would not have been written. He helped me in so many different ways, as did many of my colleagues. The book is called The Battle. And in this book, I argue something that's a little bit jarring. I argue that America is in a new culture war. This is not a culture war of the 1990s over God and gays and guns and abortions. This is not, as many people in Washington, D.C. would have you believe, a war between Democrats and Republicans. This is a struggle between two visions of America's culture. The vision that says America is based on the culture of free enterprise versus the vision that says America needs to progress to a European-style social democracy. Now, when I say free enterprise, I mean limited government, rewards and consequences of actions that are determined by market forces, and a reliance on entrepreneurship. When I say social democracy, what I mean is a large and growing government, managed economy, and a focus on income inequality or income equality. Reasonable people disagree, which is the right system for our country. Reasonable people can regret the fact that we are of a culture of free enterprise. And I am going to assert that we are in the middle of a culture war to decide which of these cultural visions should prevail. I'm going to tell you tonight why I think that free enterprise has to win. And you may not agree with me. But even if you don't agree with my points and with my arguments, I think that you will understand a little bit better why so many Americans today are so angry about what's going on in Washington, D.C. In the world of ideas, among intellectuals, frequently you see kind of an inscrutable confusion going on outside about what's going on outside of Washington. Frequently, people ask me, so what do you make of all these protests and all these tea parties? Why are people getting so wrapped around the axle about a little change in policy here, a little increase in tax rates for a few people there? And I say it's about culture, and I'm going to tell you why I think that is. So even if you disagree with what I have to say about what's best for America, I'm hoping that you'll understand what's going on a little bit better. And if you do agree with me, I'm going to tell you what I think we need to do to win, what I think we need to do to ensure the strength and safety and vitality of the free enterprise system going forward. Now, why do I say we're in a new culture war? Actually, it's not me saying that. It's the President of the United States who says that. Here's a quote from President Obama from May 13th, 2009. On that date, he gave the commencement address at Arizona State University to the graduating seniors. Arizona State sort of won the lottery to be the first university to get a commencement address by the new president. The new president addressed the graduating seniors with these words, I quote, "You're taught to chase after all the usual brass rings. You try to be on this who's who list, or that top 100 list, that has been part of our culture for far too long. Let me suggest that such an approach won't get you where you want to go. It displays a poverty of ambition. Note that he's talking about changing our culture, the necessity of changing our culture from pursuing the brass rings of success, not just changing our economy. We need to understand and appreciate this. We can pretend that the administration's policies today are part of an economic argument, are part of details about how we're going to conduct business, but we're fooling ourselves. The President of the United States is not pretending any such thing. He understands that it's our culture that we're talking about, and our culture that he believes we need to change. Now, what would our founders say? The answer is our founders would say that the President is right. This is about culture. This isn't just about economics. Here's Thomas Jefferson in 1787, a quote that you've heard many times, I imagine. "A wise and frugal government, which shall restrain men from injuring one another, which shall leave them otherwise free to regulate their own pursuits of industry and improvement, shall not take from the mouth of labor the bread it has earned." Why not? Was it because taking the bread from the mouth of labor that earned it would be economically inefficient? No. Thomas Jefferson said we shouldn't do that because it would, in his words, it is necessary to close the circle of felicities. In other words, to take the bread from the mouth of the labor that earned it would make us a less happy nation. Thomas Jefferson understood, as did the founders, that how we earn our daily bread, the prosaic details of our daily lives, our workaday lives, was how we express ourselves, was central to our culture. Jefferson and Mr. Obama would disagree violently about free enterprise, but would agree completely on the cultural centrality of free enterprise. And many Americans appear to agree that the free enterprise system is fundamentally cultural. The Tea Party movement that we see all around us these days is based on rebellion against government intrusions into the economy, including bailouts and ballooning debt. In Massachusetts, probably the most important race, or at least the most reported on race that we've seen in the past year, Scott Brown won the vacant seat that had been held for more than 40 years by the late Senator Ted Kennedy, and he won on a platform that made the moral case for capitalism. Here's the speech that really put him over the top, according to polls. He said this: "What made America great? Free markets, free enterprise, manufacturing, job creation. That's how we're going to do it, not by enlarging government." It's extraordinary. This is not a politician who's saying a chicken in every pot. This is a politician who's saying the government is putting too many chickens in too many pots. It's an incredible ethical case for the free enterprise system, and it won a celebrated election. There's no better evidence of the cultural centrality of the free enterprise system in what we're seeing in current events today. So, which culture do Americans prefer? Do Americans prefer the culture that the current leaders would like to take us to, in which we would progress into what our European friends have already started to experience, social democracy? Or do Americans prefer a culture of traditional free enterprise? That's an empirical question. That's a question we can turn to the data to ask. And the data are very clear, it turns out. In March of 2009, the Pew Research Center asked a large group of Americans, "Do you believe that free markets are the best way to organize the American economy despite severe ups and downs?" That was the wording of the question. 70% of Americans said yes, 20% of Americans said no, and 10% didn't know. Gallup, this year, in January of this year, asked whether people had a positive image of the free enterprise system. 86% said yes. At the same time, redistribution, a central facet of social democracy, is immensely unpopular. The Ayers-McHenry Polling Corporation asked this: "Which option do you prefer?" Asked this in the middle of 2009. "Do you prefer government policies? Do you believe government policies should promote fairness by narrowing the gap between rich and poor, spreading the wealth, and making sure that economic outcomes are more equal? Or Do you believe that government policies should promote opportunity by fostering job growth, encouraging entrepreneurs, and allowing people to keep more of what they earn?